Custom Card Weekly. Last week I asked you guys to design a 0 play point card. Let's see what you come up with. Starting off with our prerequisite Serpent support from Raida. 0 play point Serpent Swamp Bloodcraft Silver spell. Put a serpent into your hand. If Vengeance is active for you, put 2 serpents into your hand instead. Now I say that because I feel like every time I do a challenge, there's always one serpent card. Because people seem to really like Medusa, which I guess makes sense that she's the leader now, right? This card feels like it really doesn't do anything outside of serpent decks in particular, and I think that kind of playstyle would need more support. With Steno specifically, though, this could be pretty strong. Here's one from Ether Zero, Mind Rift. Countdown 1, Fanfare, banish the top card of both players' decks. Last words, put a copy of Mind Rift into your deck, then if you have 2 or less cards in your hand, draw a card. This seems like it's particularly powerful in Holy Mage Havencraft and not really anywhere else. But you know, I quite like that deck, so I don't mind support for it, even though it's considered very strong and unlimited right now. Next up is some forest cards from Aglo Veil. Bear Trap, banish enemy follower with 1 defense or less. If at least 4 other cards played this turn, draw a card equal to the cost of banished follower. I feel like you're missing a few connecting words in there, which is why I stumbled for a bit, but regardless, I know what you're talking about. And I feel like this is a lot better than Mark of the Unkilling, and in a good way, because this card is actually pretty reasonable for 0 play points, right? And can act as a pretty interesting draw card as well later on in the game, but not so impactful to make it, you know, universally played, so it's an interesting one. I quite like it, and the art is cute too. He also made Insectus Scythe. Destroy 1 enemy follower with 2 defense or less. If Insect Lord is in play, put Rhinoceros into your hand. I think the first effect is already pretty powerful, because it's like a 0 play point Blazing Breath in a way. The second effect also is, well, it's an interesting way to get Rhinoceros in rotation. Whether that's a good or bad thing, it's up to you, I suppose. But I feel like this is such a Yu-Gi-Oh-like effect that doesn't really feel like Shadowverse to me. I like the idea that, you know, Insect Lord is calling forth the Rhinoceros, their insect buddies or something. Cute Luxin. What is this? I don't understand where you got the idea for this. It's also very powerful. It's a way better insight that's neutral. I guess that's the power of 100 plus. Y'all are a bunch of jokers, aren't you? One from Vansha here. Dragon's Bless. Until the end of your turn, Overflow is active for you. Summon a Dragon's Curse. Countdown 1, last words, give your leader the following effect. Overflow is not active for you and lasts until the start of your opponent's turn. I do like the idea of a card that activates Overflow before Overflow is active for you. Not sure how necessary that would be because Dragon has so much ramp already, which is why I don't really think that the Dragon's Curse part of this card is necessary. It feels low utility enough that it doesn't really need the downside of the curse, I think. Also, I'd like to point out that the curse looks like Sindragosa from World of Warcraft photoshopped onto like some Swedish mountains or something, which I find pretty entertaining. Here's some from Agent Gaming. Restore 1 defense to all allies and enemies. Choose, put a random follower, spell, or amulet card to both players' hands from their decks. I think that Shadowverse on the whole needs more tutors, like desperately needs more tutor cards, because while there's 40 cards in your deck, and without tutors it really increases draw RNG, which sucks. So I think this is a pretty interesting card, and not universally good for you because you're also helping out your opponent in terms of their draw. Of course, if you're running an amulet-based deck and they're not, then you can really benefit off of Grand Festival, which is pretty nice. But it also depends on the matchup and reading what your opponent may or may not have in their deck, which I think is really cool. Dig this a lot. He also made Sinister Contract, which puts a Death Pact into both players' decks. And if you play, discard, or overdraw it, you lose the match. Ooh. Usually I'm a fan of alternate win conditions, but I don't know if I like this one very much, because it kind of just invalidates a lot of those discard strategies that are pretty interesting and unlimited. So, yeah, not sold on this, but I do like the Grand Festival quite a bit. In comes Mr. Swag with what I think is a really well-designed card for Runecraft here, Grimoire of Desperation. Discard a card, then both players draw a card. Seems pretty simple on the surface, but there's a really upside here because it's in Runecraft, so you can use it for spell boost, you can ditch cards that you don't really need in the matchup, for example, and then try and mulligan for better targets for your spell boosting needs. Or just in general, like it says in the name, find something that you desperately need in a situation to get you out of a sticky spot, which you may or may not get. So I think this card has a lot of flavor and works in the class and is deceptively interesting. Neko has a card here. Your hand goes boom. Discard your hand. I think you might have made this as a joke, but I would legit run this in Discard Dragon. Has some more consistency than just Altered Fate. As long as you run Dracomancer's Rights, you're good. I'd love that. Hey, Pixel Chew has a whole suite of cards here, from Bronze all the way to Legendary. Rin, Clumsy Cleric for Havencraft. 0.03 fanfare, randomly restore 1 defense to your leader, the enemy leader, a random allied follower, or a random enemy follower. I don't know if this is ever going to be played, but it's pretty funny. Willow Whisper, give a random enemy follower -1 attack. Enhance 5, give all enemy followers -1 attack. Maybe 3 or 4 would be better. I think 5 is a little much, but I appreciate that you're trying to make the whole unkilling package a little more rounded out here. Shiki, Snek Medic. Fanfare, put 3 serpents into your hand and give all allied serpents in your hand and then play last words, draw a card. The serpent support is real. Always happens, every single time. I think this is really, really strong though. You get 3 bodies and you draw 3, damn. Infatuation, Bloodcraft Legendary Amulet. Fanfare, if another allied infatuation is in play, destroy it and destroy a random enemy follower. Give both leaders the following effect. Whenever you deal damage to the enemy leader, deal double the damage. Cool cards, I like all of them. Hugo Rio. Well, it is Spooktober, after all. Here's Faye with an interesting spell boost card that actually spell boosts up and deals more damage with how much it's spell boosted, and then Earthrights to deal damage to the opponent's face. Not certain if spell boost needs another deal damage to face win condition, but I do like the idea of the reverse of what we usually see, you know, spell boosting up instead of down. Proton Cannon Man, I think you really have a winner with this one. I really like this one. Trading of Blows, neutral spell. Select an allied follower and an enemy follower until the start of your turn. The 2 selected followers can only attack each other or followers with ward. That's such an interesting way to defend your other followers and with such ridiculous flavor. I love this. Proton Cannon also made Fungi. Ward can't attack. Fanfare, summon an allied fungi at the start of your turn. Banish all allied fungi. It's like a very small and temporary, how long can this go on? I like the fact that you're printing Control Forcecraft tools, because I feel like they printed a lot of cards for that archetype in this expansion, but then none of them were ever very good, so Aggressive Forcecraft is still the best way to go about things. Which is sad, since it feels like they wanted to push that, and since Shadowverse has been lacking control decks for a little while now, so I actually love to see this printed. Actually, wait, never mind. I just realized that whenever we print a good early game defensive tool for control, it ends up being way better in aggro anyway. And now that I think about it, this would be way better in aggro anyway, so maybe I wouldn't like to see this printed. And you also made Pot of Greed! Do it for the meme. Here's one from Jeremy Yaya. Lets you play this as 3 different options if you've Earthrighted 7 times, and if not, you summon an enemy Scrap Golem. You can play it as a draw card option, as a Guardian Golem, or to give an allied follower the ability to evolve for free. I do really quite like the idea of something that activates depending on how many times you've Earthrighted this game. That's something that we haven't seen in Shadowverse before. But I think giving your enemy a Scrap Golem is a bit too punishing. Because that could mean a lot, especially for current board-based decks. Scrap Golems can be made use of really effectively, especially if they're running like Gilnelis and such, you know? So maybe it's a little too rough on the Rune player playing this card, but the idea of getting a benefit for doing more Earthrights is something that I think should be explored. Greetings! Today I bring you the most overpowered card in Shadowverse history, for you see, via a mistake in the wording, this one card allows you to create any Dragoncraft deck imaginable. Chromatic Aberration a card, Violet, craft another, repeat equals infinite vials. Kello is not liable for any damages caused by the implementation of Chromatic Aberration up to and including the total annihilation of in-game economy. Hire me, Psy Games. Terms and conditions apply. Not available in Take 2. Well, that was a fun little fanfiction, wasn't it? This card's like the epitome of draw last. I actually really quite like it. Again, more tutors in Shadowverse, please. More tutors equals good, because more tutors equals less draw RNG equals good, because draw RNG is bad. It's all basic mathematics. Of course, not all tutors are healthy, right? But I do think that in general, we need to have some more, and I quite like this one. This is pretty cool. Sky Shifter has Crucible of Bones with the message, Month of Spooks calls for a calcium-rich card. I agree! Fanfare, put a skeleton into your hand. Whenever an allied follower's Burial Rite effects activate, excluding targeted effects, repeat those effects, then destroy this amulet. And he also included a nice little picture here. Doot, thank you, appreciate it. +5 calcium for me. Not only have you come up with a pretty nice meme, but this card is just super cool also. I really like this. It's not only relevant for 0 play points, because it's not a good card by itself by any means, but it enables other cards in your deck, which allows you to deck build more interestingly, and Lets you build like an actual burial rite kind of deck that doesn't completely rely on reanimate or mid-rangey strategies. So it could open up like a whole new kind of archetype, whether or not it's good or not, depends on the support of course, but I do like this kind of card where, you know, just diversify the amount of ways you can play the class and the game in general. So, good meme, good card, A+. It really is Spooktober, isn't it? I almost forgot, but thanks for reminding me, guys. Vietnam has made a card for every class, which is awesome, but my favorite's gotta be this one, because it capitalizes off the fact that Disdain effects proc off of 0 damage. So, obviously the best use case for this would be to proc your Servant or your Galmu one more time, because you could get an additional proc off without destroying it, but it's also has a bit of nuance to it where it's kind of situationally useful even without that scenario, because you can have it be a very ineffective but still a present way to help you trade into enemy followers, given that you have a follower on board. But it's also just very bad against fairies and knights, right? Which is great, because it's a card that is situationally very, very good, but isn't completely dead outside of that scenario, but it's still very ineffective outside of that scenario that you're trying to build around it, which I think is very relevant for a 0 play point card. I think there's a lot of good design going into something so simple here. Here's one from Alt Dim Sum, which I really like, because it plays around with a mechanic in Swordcraft, and I guess in Shadowverse as a whole, that hasn't really been toyed around with despite being introduced, this whole more enemy followers than allied followers thing. We've seen it in Frontline Ramparts, I think we've seen it in Dragon Sculpture, but honestly I can't remember because nobody freaking plays that card, which is part of the reason why I like this card in the first place, because it's a 0.01, which is terrible, but it's a 2/1 if you're behind, which is really great, actually, a nice catch-up mechanism. And the evolve effect here, helping to punish wider boards, is really good as well, because I think the meta right now is very board-centric, and we could use something maybe a little like this. Good example of a way to play around with this mechanic that is really underutilized. Hell yeah, Spooky Shade. Omen of 1 support, Omen of 1 tutor. That's right, let's make the Jerry meme real. We have Unclean Soul, that has made 2 cards which I absolutely freaking adore. Monkey Butler. While this follower is in play, all of your cards cost 1 less. Whenever you play a card, shuffle this follower into your deck. And, May We Meet Again, shuffle a copy of every other card you've played this turn into your deck. I freaking love these cards, but it makes me sad that even if they were a thing, they'd never be played, because the win conditions are just so fast in both rotation and unlimited right now. And I do miss, like, controlling style archetypes, like, they're just not gonna be a thing. It feels like, and attrition-based strategies just won't ever be viable. Not even being viable, but even playable, which is sad, right? Like, even in a meme deck, if you want to go May We Meet Again and have games that go on forever and grind your opponent out, feels like that'll never be a thing, because there's these cards that deal 1 million damage on turn 7 and, you know, ruin everybody's fun, so... These cards are great, and I love them, but it also just makes me kind of upset. And finally, we have a meme by Admiral Riff here. It's a pretty good meme. Seems very Hearthstone-y, though, so I don't know if anybody will really like this card being in Shadowverse. I'm pretty sure this is a Hearthstone card, isn't it? Isn't there like a Shaman spell that does something similar to this? And you know, sometimes it's nice to let the plebs play with the big boy cards. That was ironic. Don't leave any angry comments, please. That's it for Custom Card Weekly for this week. Thank you all for submitting. I encourage you to check out all of the submissions, again, by using the hashtag CCW0. But now it's time for next week's challenge. And I want to let you guys know that next week's CCW will be coming out on Sunday, so you'll have a few less days to work with here. So I thought, let's have an equally ramshackle theme for this week. I want you to draw some art in MS Paint or your jank image processor equivalent, and then make a Shadowverse card based off what you drew. It can be an original creation, it can be a drawing of something that already exists. Take this as seriously or as jokingly as you'd like. That's it for this video. Like it if you did, don't if you didn't. Subscribe for more Shadowverse content and Custom Card Weekly in the very near future. And of course, thank you to my wonderful patrons, patreon.com/Ignideus. If you'd like to support the channel as well, I'd highly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.